My name is Andrew Bowser, and my short film is called Frankenbabes from Beyond the Grave. I've always been a fan of 80s camp horror, camp as in the genre, not the location. So I was a big fan of like Frank Henenlotter's Frankenhooker. I love Stuart Gordon's Reanimator. So I wanted to do a reanimation story, but with maybe a more modern, progressive message. And that's what led me to Frankenbabes from Beyond the Grave. I took inspiration from Tales from the Crypt. I feel like there was a visual language to Tales from the Crypt, especially the first few seasons, that I don't see often represented in horror now. I love a Dutch angle. I love some stylized lighting. So I rewatched a bunch of Tales from the Crypt episodes when prepping for Frankenbabes. So I was here in 2023 with a feature called Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls, and it had a great reception at Screamfest. I love playing Screamfest. Oftentimes, I think for genre filmmakers that are based in LA, it's our hometown premiere, and it's when our cast and crew can come out and see the project they were a part of. But Onyx was a horror comedy with very little gore. It was almost an R-rated, Ernest Scared Stupid. And I really wanted to be back at Screamfest with something that delivered on the blood and guts, because Onyx was a lot friendlier for horror audiences and as far as their standards go. And even though they loved it, I think Frankenbabes was a chance for me to do something with a little more splatter and be a little more mean-spirited, whereas Onyx is a super friendly, again, almost like a kid's movie gone bad. So when I started prepping Frankenbabes, it was only ever gonna be a short. And then I think on the second day of shooting, because it was a 3-day shoot, I realized I want it to be a feature, but specifically I want it to be a horror musical feature in the vein of Little Shop of Horrors or Rocky Horror. And then I felt dumb for not making the short a musical, but I think I needed to make it before I'd have that next stage of ideation. So on set, I thought, oh, this isn't a short, it's a feature. And not only is it a feature, it's a musical. So I'm hoping we can develop the Frankenbabes concept into a really funny, campy horror musical. The vibe on our set was a mixture of light and silly because it was such funny material, mixed with the stress of production, especially because it was the hottest day of the year and we were on location in a set, a morgue that was built to be a set, but it was built at an actual cemetery. And of course, when you're filming, the AC is off, and we had on one day 4 characters in full body special effects makeup. The next day, another 4 characters in full body special effects makeup, contact lenses, wigs, the whole 9. So although it was fun, I think it might have been more fun for me on some days because the performers had to be so laden in makeup. But to be honest, they kept their spirits up the entire time. So I think overall, everyone's memory of the shoot is a jovial one. So the casting for Frankenbabes is actually tied to the producing and the financing of Frankenbabes. I crowdfunded partially my feature, Onyx the Fortuitous and the Talisman of Souls, because it was based on an internet character I'd done for quite some time. And so all of the weight to crowdfund and reach an audience was on my shoulders as the creator. I wanted to try crowdfunding again with an ensemble of performers that had their own followings. And that's where it began. I reached out to performers, cosplayers, and actresses that had been in some of my comedy sketches over the years and said, if we were to do a short together and we crowdfunded it, would you be willing to utilize your social media and pull from your fan base to bring in the financing to make Frankenbabes? And this would be your character, and then they would get these rewards. And that's how we built out the cast, was people that I had worked with before, but that also were comfortable utilizing their fan base for crowdfunding, because it is a very delicate situation when you crowdfund. Some fans like it, some fans don't. So our cast was built out from that kind of blend of performer that was willing to partner with me in that sense. And so not only are they performers in it, they are investors and they're producers. They helped shape the creative of the script because the film also needed to make their fan base happy. So it was a real collaborative effort. It was almost like casting by way of hiring producers, by way of finding financing, all happening at once. Because I'm on camera sometimes, I think I have maybe like a way to talk to actors that they respect, that I think shows I have insight into their process, even though everyone's process is different. But I think by not acting in this, I was reminded how much I like directing and feeling the freedom to keep my eyes locked on the monitor and be surprised by the performers. I think when I'm in a movie and I'm acting, even as a scene partner, I'm still directing, and maybe I'm not the best scene partner because I'm thinking about too many other things. Whereas I feel like the people in this short were really able to engage with each other, and then I was able to relax and let things be a little looser because I had eyes on the monitor. I could say, yeah, that improv is allowed. You can do that. Go more in that direction. I think when I'm on camera, I feel less like loosening the reins for some reason. Maybe it's just because I don't have the bird's eye view. So this process kept me at a bird's eye view, and I was reminded how nice it is to not also be having to, make a bunch of silly faces on camera the whole time while you're directing. It was 3 days at the location, and then we did 1 day of pickups. We shot in Altadena, but then the pickup day was at our special effects makeup shop, Little Shop of Gore. Ryan and Selena there, we did insert shots of a lot of the prosthetics and the gore and the bloody tools and things like that. Even though we stick to the script, quote unquote, I will say a thing that I have to learn as a director is letting the actor reinterpret the pace or the cadence of a line. Even if they are saying the words I wrote, I might have been picturing a very specific punctuation or rhythm, and I might be forcing my rhythm into someone else's performance. And this reminded me that there's a performer in this film named Jimmy Simpson who has such a unique cadence. And once I saw him delivering the lines I had written, even though I did write it for him, he naturalized the dialogue and made it so much funnier because it sat into the right place and space for his energy. And watching that, I was reminded, okay, yeah, like relax a little, Bouse. This is better than how you pictured it. And so he did improvise, of course, but more than improvising, I think naturalizing the dialogue to a place where the rhythm was unexpected to me actually made it funnier. Yet the purpose of this short was to really showcase a lot of the department heads from the Onyx feature, but for me to not be on camera so that I could just be the director concerned with the performance and the technical. So it was really to showcase Eric Zapata, our special effects makeup lead, and my cinematographer, Dan Adlerstein, really giving them time to do their work. And that is what I was most excited about in terms of Frankenbabes, was the makeup and the movements of the camera. Those mattered a lot to me. Sound design and score as well. Also, my visual effects lead, Tyler Adams, giving him free rein to really dial in the special effects or the visual effects to the level that he wanted. So it really was built to be like a technical showcase for the department heads that I really enjoyed working with on my last feature. Editing is the one place I don't loosen the reins. I edit everything I shoot. If I ever make a bigger film, if I got to make a studio film or something where you're not going to let the director act like an auteur and cut it himself, then I would gladly hand it over to a trusted editor. But at this stage, everything I make is still so independent. It's just easier for me to be the one to cut it and push it over the finish line, especially because, as any indie filmmaker knows, your days are so tight and so limited. You're really making editorial decisions by what you're shooting and not shooting. And sometimes what I shoot might confuse an editor because I've really shot it to be cut one way. And they look at the footage and they say, but you don't have this and you don't have that. And I say, well, I don't need that if you cut it this way. So it helps everyone if I cut my own stuff right now. Maybe in the future that'll change. There were elements in this short that were always meant to be practical. I'll just give an example. There's a character in the short that has an exposed brain because all of these women are Frankensteined back together, and she has like a metal frame around her cranium and the brain is exposed. The practical prop that was meant to go around her cranium and on top of the brain was meant to have a glass dome. And I want everything to be practical in a sense. I love visual effects, but I do love visual effects when they accentuate or emphasize the practical. But I love Tyler and what he does with visual effects. He's a real artist. And he told me, he said, I know you're obsessed with everything being practical. I love practical effects too, Andrew. But if we were to do the glass dome digitally, it would actually be easier. And he walked me through why it would be easier, how he would be able to control the light even more, the reflections even more. We wouldn't have to be removing crew members from shots. He could only include what we want reflected in that dome. He could light the brain in a way that would read on camera, whereas if it were a practical light, depending on the setting she was in, you might not even see that cool little LED strip that's lighting up the brain. So he had to step me away from thinking practical, practical, practical. And now I have to say, seeing the final product, which is a practical metal rim with a practical prosthetic brain, but a digital glass dome with digital reflections, or actual reflections placed in digitally, it does sell the illusion better. So that's an example of me needing to like listen to the passionate artists that I work with and understand that he's right. A blend of practical with VFX might be the better approach. I think the greatest challenge with the Frankenbabes short is that we could only get 4 of the characters through special effects makeup each day, and there are 8 Frankenbabes total. So any shot where they're all together is a split screen, or just clever editing where we're kind of confusing the viewer so where they don't understand they're not all in the same room together at the same time. And that was the hardest thing, was structuring out your day based on which half of the Frankenbabes you have, when you really are meant to have all of them together at once. And that became a bit of a scheduling nightmare, but we got it all done, thankfully. My favorite thing was seeing all of the cast come together in their makeup and in their looks, because we've been talking about it for a long time. We'd been crowdfunding, and we'd been setting shoot dates and moving shoot dates for a while. So to finally see each of the Frankenbabes in their looks, head to toe in leather and studs and green and blue and pink skin, that was the most exciting thing. To see them look like the original concept art finally stepping in front of the camera really, really made me happy. I never was scared, but I was shocked sometimes at the different stages of painting and undress everybody had to be in. You'd come down and we were in, again, a real mausoleum, and you just have a bunch of people in a tent getting spray painted, so they'd be kind of half monstrous and half nude, and that was always a shock when you'd round the corner and you think you're in this solemn mausoleum partnered next to a chapel, and there's monstrous people being built. That was always funny, and we had to make sure we didn't accidentally show any of that to the people that were actually coming to that location to pay respects or visit a grave. Something I learned from Frankenbabes is the same, honestly, it's the same thing you learn on every production, which is just, the best laid plans of mice and men. Like you can schedule and you can schedule and you can plan and you can plan, and then there's a heat wave, and then you lose power, and then someone's stuck in traffic. It's just, the lesson is you have to be able to pivot, and you have to be able to move on to something else if your structured best laid plans just can't happen. And we had a real delay because of heat and power on Frankenbabes, and we did lose some time, and there was just nothing for us to pivot to. And even though it's a lesson I've learned many, many times, I reminded myself in that moment, you have to have something you can move on to so that there's no true downtime, or else you're going to be kicking yourself in the editing room later. This is different than a lot of the other films I've made. I also think it's kind of a continuation or maybe an amplification of certain elements from other projects I've made. I think people can watch Frankenbabes and take away what I would do with something that was more of a spookablast, something, again, with a little more splatter, a little more of a mean spirit to it. I don't think they often see that in my work. Again, it's usually a little friendlier, and this one just has a little more bite to it, and I think that'll be exciting for people that are familiar with the kind of comedy